Hi, I'm Max Keiser, and this is the Keiser Report. This show's going over 100,000 views on YouTube, if you make it happen. You know, there's a global insurrection against the banker occupation going around the world. Why? Because it has been discovered that the global banking cartel has a soft underbelly at JP Morgan. JP Morgan has 1.5 trillion exposure in derivatives to a rising silver price. As silver prices rise, JP Morgan's life is on the line. We have the ability to take down a giant. This is fantastic. Stacy Herbert, tell me more.
Max Keiser, crash JP Morgan, buy silver.
Yeah!
I bought this on the way into the studio. But before we go to your viral campaign of crash JP Morgan buy silver, I want to set the stage for revolution. I have King Eric in the headlines. Cantona, collapse the banks. Pas compliqué. So this is Eric Cantona, who's
nice French, by the way. Pas compliqué. Eric Cantona, famous football star. What's he up to?
So here's a video of him, and he is talking about the people with placards out in the streets and how old-fashioned that is. He says, we don't pick up weapons to kill people to start the revolution. The revolution is really easy to do nowadays. What is the system? The system turns around the banks. It's based on the power of the banks. So it must be destroyed starting from the banks. This means that the 3 million people with the placards on the street, they go to the bank, withdraw their money from banks, and these ones collapse.
Well, yes, he makes a good point. It's a step in the right direction, isn't it? Taking your money out of the bank, similar to the campaign in the United States, move your money. But unless you do something with that money, it's really going to fail. Unless you take the money you take out of the banks, the paper money, the fiat money, and buy silver bullion with it. Then you've got the full 360-degree weapon of disenfranchisement pointed at the banking system's heart with a silver spike through that, as Matt Taibbi calls them, the vampire squids that are strangling the global economy.
Well, of course, and as he's saying is, like, you go and take your fiat currency cash out of the system. What you're left with is still their unit of fraud, which is the fiat piece of paper. You have no wealth with it unless the banks, determine what that wealth is.
See, the problem has been that over the past 10, 20 years that banks have stolen everybody's wealth using fiat currency and derivatives and all those CDS products invented by financial terrorists like Blythe Masters over there at JP Morgan. Now it's time to reverse the process by confiscating the wealth from the banks. And we do this by buying silver. The more silver we buy, the more wealth they lose.
And why is silver important? It's because it's considered one of the poor man's real currencies. But this brings me to the next headline, Max. Max Keiser, buy a silver coin, destroy JP Morgan. So this is from Zero Hedge and the reporting on you appearing on the Alex Jones radio show, where you came up with the idea of buying silver to expose JP Morgan's naked shorts on the silver market, collapsing them by forcing them to cover with their shorts. So here's Tyler Durden at Zero Hedge. Max Keiser shares his brilliantly simple plan to bring down the precious metal manipulation cartel. If everyone in America buys a silver coin, it would crash JP Morgan.
Yeah, and let me just get back to this idea of gold versus silver for a second. Another reason why the silver campaign makes sense versus the gold campaign is because the market for silver is substantially smaller. So this buying pressure and taking the physical silver off the market will have a direct impact on the price of silver and JP Morgan's exposure to the rising price of silver. So you have a leverage. There's more leverage in silver by doing this with silver than with gold. That's the primary reason. In other words, we want leverage. We want, for every ounce we buy and take it off the market in physical silver, to have the greatest downside hit to JP Morgan's market capitalization. We want their stock price to go to zero.
And JP Morgan that all of the short positions in silver are very concentrated in this one single entity of JP Morgan. Nobody knows for sure, but they reckon it's between 25 and 50% of all shorts in the silver market are held by JP Morgan.
Yes, and the reason why, again, is because both silver and gold, the manipulation of these two precious metals, are used by JP Morgan and HSBC and Goldman Sachs as a way to keep the dollar relatively high in value. And the US dollar is the means by which America imposes its imperium around the world. And they're guilty of war crimes, as we now know. Even George Bush in his book said, yeah, I'm guilty of war crimes. Yeah, I like waterboarding. So, I mean, America is now the equivalent of Nazi Germany, as George Bush himself admits. He says, yeah, I'm Himmler. I'm Hitler. So what? What are you going to do about it? I tell you what we're going to do about it, George. We're going to put your little pet bank, JP Morgan, on the mat. They're done.
Well, the other thing to note is everybody has been focusing on Goldman Sachs. And remember, Goldman Sachs almost did go out of business. You can't forget that during the 2008 crisis. But which bank was totally immune, apparently, from everything? JP Morgan, despite having the largest derivatives book by far in the world, estimated at about $96 trillion. So how were they so immune from everything that was collapsing around them, all the derivatives blowing up around the world? JP Morgan suffered hardly any damage relative to everybody else.
That's right. Goldman would have been out of business except for the largesse of Warren Buffett, who of course got a fantastic deal that he cut with Goldman directly, a deal that was not available to the U.S. taxpayer. And let me just point out for a second here to those liberal media types like Bill Maher, Jon Stewart, who's that chick on CNBC?
Rachel Maddow.
Rachel Maddow, okay? They are making the mistake of saying that the U.S. public has been reimbursed for the money that was used to bail out the banks and these corporations. That's completely false. The amount of indebtedness has been skyrocketing. Learn how to read a freaking balance sheet before opening your mouth, or just play in the sandbox with your little toys and your little yuck.
Okay, let's move back to our big story, because we are the center of this global story. You are, Max, and that's the crash JP Morgan buy silver. So this is the important story. Look, Zero Hedge ends their piece with, it will be interesting to see how far this meme carries. So your meme being crash JP Morgan buy silver. So let's look and see how it went viral within hours. First, hi-ho silver. And these are some posters. We started with some poster campaigns. You can look at, let's go kick some too big to fail, beep, Tonto. And then here's a nice poster as well. A silver coin is a silver bullet with a bullet-ridden JP Morgan logo. But it was the video, the viral video campaigns on YouTube, which are the most amazing. And let's turn to this one rolling in the background here. This is a video of from Stuart's Bushcraft blog.
And today I went out and got 30 silver bullets, 30 silver nails in the coffin of JP Morgan. So I'm sorry, JP Morgan. I had to get 2 kilos as well, yeah? I'm really sorry. It was nice knowing you.
I love this guy. We got to get him on the show. You know, something interesting, Stacy. So far, all these videos have been in English. Okay, let's start seeing videos like this in all kinds of different languages, all different countries all over the world. Because remember, the global insurrection against banker occupation, it's a global insurrection. Every single country in the world, everyone around the world is being subjected to the tyranny of an occupying force of bankers. And so let's see some of these videos in other languages. Let's get this global party going.
Okay, you refer to plural of videos, and I do have quite a few other videos as well. Here's from Tofu Mary. As you see, she's whipping out 2 100-ounce bars of silver. She's pretty serious. Here's one from America. This is Crash JP Morgan at YouTube, and he has quite a few dozens of silver coins there. But this one is from Jackie O channel, and this one goes out directly to you, Max. Here is Jackie O singing for you.
Now get out of the dollar. Bank is busting, gold we trust, and silver is our mine. Everyone, listen to Max Keiser. Buy an ounce of silver and crash J.P. Morgan today.
Oh, that's beautiful. Yeah, you know, the thing about the Jackie O video also is that interesting, she makes reference to JFK, who Executive Order 11110 back in 1963 was going to reintroduce silver and silver certificates as a challenge to the Federal Reserve banking system. Shortly thereafter, JFK was assassinated. A lot of people postulate that those two events are linked. Certainly, what we've seen in the last 2 years, Stacy Herbert, with Hank Paulson before Congress saying to Congress, give us $750 billion or we're going to kill you, was his message, his subtext. He threatened to kill the members of Congress unless they forked over $750 billion, according to testimony that was later talked about of the Congress folks in the backroom deals. We know that they're serious about their paper currency. They're willing to commit homicide. They're willing to take out a standing president for their paper currency Ponzi schemes. So this is a powerful force we're talking about. For every ounce of silver you buy, it's like putting another silver nail in the coffin of J.P. Morgan, one of the probably the biggest financial terrorists in the world today.
And here's a little image here from the trending topics on YouTube. As you can see, big there, crash JP Morgan buy silver. And you also see TSA and Alex Jones. I know you have him coming up as a guest in the second half of the show. And then, so finally, I want to take you if we don't stop these guys, here's a very important story to look at because you're talking about terror and the financial terror going on. Here's a headline: New York terror watching cameras triple with bomb plots. So they talk about all these CCTV cameras being put in the financial district of New York City at Wall Street. You think, wow, the Homeland Security is finally on our side. They're going to start viewing these financial terrorists down there. No. Guess who owns these cameras? Goldman Sachs and the New York Fed.
Well, you know, as I said, you know, there needs to be this campaign to decapitalize. You know, I would go so far as to pick up on that French Revolution theme. And of course, the Reign of Terror was all about decapitation. This, what we're talking about here is decapitalization. We can decapitalize J.P. Morgan, the financial terrorist, by buying silver coins, and therefore they have to cover their silver short position, which by some estimates, because of the derivatives that they control, is in somewhere in the order of $1.5 trillion worth of exposure. That would obviously take down J.P. Morgan and possibly some other corrupt banks as well. Look, we're all going to end up as indentured servants anyway. If you know, that's the track. If we want to stop that from happening, we've got to put these monarchs and paper money cartel guys out of business.
That's a good idea. I've got my silver, Max.
Oh, that's fantastic.
Crash JP Morgan, buy silver. I've done it.
Well, thanks so much for being on the Keiser Report, Stacy Herbert.
Thank you, Max.
Stay tuned because after the break, I'll be talking with the legendary Alex Jones. Hi, welcome back to the Keiser Report. As promised, we shall now go to Austin, Texas to talk to the one and only Alex Jones. Alex Jones, welcome back to the Keiser Report.
Max, it's good to be here. Thanks.
Alex Jones, let's talk InfoWars. First, tell us about your weapon of choice, the Google bomb. How was it developed? How was it deployed?
My weapon of choice, the Google bomb. You have a way of putting things, Max. No, I mean, it's just one little tool in the Infowars.com arsenal is to have our great listeners who are concerned about an issue like TSA revolt, that was the #1 search term Friday, to basically put a term out there so that then when people click on it, it takes them back to the articles that we've written. And so it's a way to try to culture jam the mainstream dinosaur corporate media that has always done this themselves. They force feed Lindsay Lohan and O.J. Simpson and Anna Nicole Smith on the population. They even admit they do this and create their own feedback loop. So we are attempting to put real issues out into the debate, and we do that a few times a week, and it's been very successful.
All right, so if you look at a mainstream media broadcaster like Glenn Beck, he's purely ratings driven. The agenda there is ratings. They don't have any journalistic integrity whatsoever at all. It's a Rupert Murdoch production. He's a globalist. He's got no compunction about doing whatever it takes to simply make money. He's not a journalist. He's an oligarch. So, but as a ratings-driven enterprise, what you're able to do at InfoWars, if you get your Google bombs to the head of Google search, then their editorial staff sees that you're generating the ratings, and then I see Glenn Beck is now following you. So there's been a complete reversion. There's been a complete new paradigm that you're introducing here, because now you're driving mainstream media. True or false?
Well, I think I'm a part of that. I mean, all of the alternative media together is shifting the base away from the controlled corporate media to the independent and alternative media. And they've had international studies, quite a few of them just in the last few years, showing that around 2 years ago, the Rubicon was crossed, and people trust alternative media more than they trust mainstream media. And more people now get their news from alternative media and that wide spectrum of true diversity than they do from the old line corporate media. And that trend is accelerating. They're losing more and more credibility in the polls. They're losing more and more viewers. And Rupert Murdoch is smart. He knows that. So going back around 2 years ago, they shifted and started imitating my little webcast with the same cameras, the same graphics, the same nomenclature, but putting a right-wing spin on it. What's happening is the people at Fox are watching my show, listening to my radio show. They're looking into the things I cover, and it's really giving them, at some point, moral support to try to tell the truth. Look, just a few days ago on Saturday, Geraldo Rivera, who's attacked 9/11 Truth, had Bob McIlvaine, who lost his son in the towers, and one of the architects and engineers for 9/11 Truth on. And at the end of it, he said, look, I have to have an open mind about this now. I mean, I really see what you're talking about. We need to investigate Building 7. Glenn Beck last week said the government may stage terror attacks to blame it on the American people. So, yes, we're starting to see a complete flip-flop by these people. And Beck's ratings had been plunging in the last 6 months from about 3.5 million down to 2 million on average. Now that he's been doing this the last month, they've shot back up to over 3 million because they look at a little show like mine that operates on a shoestring, having 2 million independent radio listeners a day, around 2 million web visitors a day, and they see those 4 million overall a day, and they see the trend on all the online aggregators and Google Analytics showing that we're going up, 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 and that our growth curve is dwarfing the entire spectrum of mainstream media, and that scares the system.
Right. Okay. Now you talk about your little show with 2 million or 4 million listeners or viewers of the website, but your show, because you have, as I said, used your weapon of choice, the Google bomb, have effectively hacked your way into mainstream media and are now setting the agenda for mainstream media, and all these formerly taboo subjects like 9/11 Truth are now going into mainstream media because they're ratings driven and you're truth driven. Now the truth suddenly means something in American media. Now I was on your show last week, Alex Jones. You were talking to me, and I did drop a Google bomb of my own, which was crash JP Morgan buy silver. Now since I mentioned that on your show, we've been bombarded with these homemade videos. It's gone viral. If you do a search now, crash JP Morgan buy silver, you'll see that the Google is replete and YouTube is replete with videos and articles written on this. So this Google bomb technology within the last 72 hours has been incredibly effective. Since you're kind of the granddaddy of this, what do we do next? What's the next level? Where do we go from here?
Maybe we don't tell them what we're doing, Max. Maybe we call ourselves little and fly under the radar. But obviously they're noticing I know Google is trying to block some of the things that we're doing. Sometimes we put the term out and they will block InfoWars and Prison Planet where they're non-searchable with those particular articles, but it doesn't matter because thousands of other sites then copy our stories over, and so those pop up, and then that leads people to us to get the information. But I agree with you, Max. I want to have you back on this week to have an organized Google bomb. So what you need to do is write an article breaking down your idea and explaining this simply. We'll publish it at Infowars.com on the day of your choosing, but you don't want to even point out in the article that, well, we need to talk about it off air. Not that I'm an expert in this. This is all just something we're testing out and trying. It was only about 6 months ago that a caller called in and said, Alex, why don't you tell listeners to search key terms? And I said, okay, let's try it. And it became #1. And it is starting to set a lot of the agendas. But things are happening here when mainstream media is having to now come out and cover a lot of the topics that you and I cover. But it's more than just what Alex Jones or my great activist listeners are doing that's causing this. It's an overall loss of trust in the system. And I just saw the New York Times this weekend admitting that our government brought tens of thousands of Nazis into the U.S. and protected them, and that the Operation Paperclip was a lot worse than we'd previously known. Well, we knew that decades ago. They're just having to admit it now to stay relevant. And so they're trying to catch up. And unfortunately for them, it's too little, too late.
All right. Alex Jones, talking about how you're taking these stories and putting them into the mainstream press, this is unmistakably got to be the coup d'etat of the year in terms of what you're doing over there at InfoWars, the TSA story. You, again, made it a Google search, #1 Google search about the TSA and the naked scanners. Then, right after that, you saw Matt Drudge, and he's very influential with the Drudge Report. He's been linking to that now for a week. Suddenly, it's a huge news in the United States. Tell us about the TSA campaign. What's going on?
Well, all we did going back about 3 weeks ago was start doing search terms dealing with TSA, enhanced pat-downs, and the naked body scanners. And all we did was tap into rage that was already there, because now millions of Americans a week go through these systems. They're going in at airports all over the country. I fly and have been seeing them everywhere I go now. And they do grab your genitals. They do grab your breast. They do yell and scream at you. What's happened is all these cowards in mainstream corporate media, they would never criticize it. But because of Matt Drudge having the courage, and you got to give him credit, of posting our articles and others in the last 2 weeks, it's now given the media coverage. LA Times, in fact, I've got all the articles right here. Forbes, Chicago Tribune, hundreds of them with headlines like "Abolish the TSA." Forbes or Chicago Tribune, "Government in your pants," and the reporters are saying to the TSA, "How dare you lie and say this isn't molestation? You did it to me and my wife." What's happening is New York Times writers, others, are going with their wife and children. It's like being at a Nazi train station. They're there grabbing. This happened to one of my employees. That was the first thing Drudge linked to over 2 weeks ago. Was Michelle came back from a vacation with her 2 daughters, 20 months and 8 years, and they tried to have a man search them. The man did search Michelle, I think a 26-year-old woman, but then tried to put his hands on the little girl's crotch, and she said no and called a woman over. I mean, this is insane. Then TSA lied and said, we don't have men searching women. I was in San Jose a few weeks ago and saw men searching women. They were only putting women and children through the naked body scanners. Only. I mean, this is, by the way, the TSA now admits they're trying to condition us to accept the scanners, and they admit that the pat-downs are brutal to scare you and make you submit. And they told Atlantic Monthly, Jeff Goldberg, the TSA did, that they call it the male member measuring device. They used the street slang term that was the first name of George Bush's vice president. They call it the Dick Cheney measuring device, if I can use that term here on RT. And I'm sorry to be crude, but that's what's going on. So there was this huge volcanic pool of anger. And now it's been given a vent through Infowars.com, PrisonPlanet.com, through the Drudge Report. That's what really cracked open the volcano. And then it came spewing out, and now it's got a life of its own and is one of the biggest stories in the world, and it's only getting bigger as people revolt everywhere. They have a Reuters poll that's been out for 2 days with over 50,000 votes, and 97%, and the poll's still going, so it may change, but 97% say they will not fly this Thanksgiving. The heads of the flight crews, the major lobbies, the flight attendant lobbies, the hotel lobbies, the theme park lobbies, the travel lobbies, all went last Friday and met with the head of Homeland Security at the White House in an emergency meeting. And she said, we're going to continue all this. And they came out and complained to the media and said this was not reassuring and that this is killing travel. And CNN reports just last year, this cost more than $9 billion in travel in the U.S. Tourism to the U.S. is down by over a third in the last 4 years, and that's accelerating because people recognize total tyranny. And folks keep saying Americans are sheep. Americans will go along with anything. Once the sleeping giant awakens, you can't put the genie back in the bottle. And so this juggernaut is starting to wake up, and the globalists are really starting to panic.
Alex Jones is on the march. He's got the empire on the run. Alex Jones, thanks so much for being on the Keiser Report. Looking forward to being on your show again soon.
Max, thank you. And you've got the empire on the run as well. We're all doing this together.
Fantastic. And that's going to do it for this edition of the Keiser Report with me, Max Keiser, and Stacy Herbert. I want to thank my guest, Alex Jones. If you want to send me an email, please do so at keiserreport@rttv.ru. Until next time, this is Max Keiser saying bye, y'all.